Thank you all for jumping on the webinar this noon. And good afternoon, everyone. Sunny greetings from West Lafayette in Purdue campus. We are excited to get things rolling here with our webinar focusing on the MAP Alumni Perspectives on Mentoring, then and now. And this is like a homecoming, if you will. We're bringing back some very familiar faces that were part of the Mentoring at Purdue program and team. And so I'd just like to take a moment to thank the Mentoring at Purdue team here, who organized this website, or this webinar, excuse me. So I'm Neil Knobloch, and I direct the Mentoring at Purdue program with the MAP team, including Dr. Levon Esters, Cornell Francis, Stephen McBride, Monique Hovey, and Sarah Teese. This program was started about 8 years ago to advance inclusive mentoring in women and minoritized graduate students in the agriculture STEM disciplines, and we appreciate everyone's efforts in organizing this webinar. Just a few logistic reminders. Please mute your microphone, and you're welcome to turn on your video if you would like to see other faces. I will facilitate today's webinar. I'll introduce our panel, or at least get them started so they can introduce themselves. I'll ask a few questions for about 25, 30 minutes. And then at about 12:40, we're going to queue it up and open it up for the audience to ask questions. And so about 10 minutes prior to the end of the webinar, be on the lookout for a Qualtrics link you'll see in the chat, and that will allow us to get feedback for planning future webinars. So as we were planning for today's webinar, we were thinking, how do we get started? And so we thought a great place to get the conversation started is to ask those who have been a part of Mentoring at Purdue and know this program quite well to now reflect on what was that experience like, or what were those experiences like, as well as now how are you navigating what mentoring looks like in the professional roles of our panelists. So we've asked 4 MAP alumni to join us today and reflect on their experiences as a graduate student, as well as in how are they taking those experiences and putting them into their professional role in the workplace. All 4 of our panel participants are alumni of HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. All of them were part of the Mentoring at Purdue program, and hoorah, all of them are Purdue alumni. So that's the most exciting part, that they also successfully completed their degrees here at Purdue and are doing some great things. So without further ado, I'm going to ask our 4 panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll get started with some questions. So who would like to go first? How about we just start with Brandon? Would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Knobloch. And it is wonderful to be on this side of the aisle now, instead of doing the planning and doing the questions and things like that. So this is quite different for me. But as he said, I am a graduate of HBCU. I went to Virginia State University, and I had known people who I went through the Summer Scholars Program that the Mentoring at Purdue hosts in the summer, and from those connections, they're the ones that introduced me to Dr. Esters, and that's how we got connected. That's how he became my doctoral advisor. And so it was through somebody else's experience through the Mentoring at Purdue Summer Scholars Program that I actually became involved with the Mentoring at Purdue program. Now I did, as he mentioned, I am a Purdue alumni as well. I got my PhD in the Department of Agriculture, Science, Education, and Communication, where my dissertation focused on utilizing critical race theory to examine how predominantly white landowner universities utilize key diversity officers. And so there was a great opportunity for me to dive into the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is what I currently do now. I am the program manager for diversity and culture of inclusion and engineering workforce development with the Aspire Engineering Research Center. So we focus on the accessibility and sustainability in the pursuit of electrification for transportation. So we deal with electric charging and infrastructure designs to support EV electric vehicles. And so I'm in charge of doing some of the recruitment and retention for diversity, equity, and inclusion amongst the Engineering Research Center. And I'm also in charge of developing the mentoring program. Ironically, what we're here for today, so I'm in charge of directing that, and I also run their research experience for undergraduates program as well. And so I have a number of different programs that I have under my belt, and many of the things that I utilize that from the learning from the Mentoring at Purdue programs, being part of the team that and helping develop some of that, I'm utilizing in my workforce today. And that's why I couldn't be more proud of my experience that I had with the Mentoring at Purdue program. And I wish we'll talk about it a little bit more later. But yeah, that's my spiel, a little bit about my background.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. Next on my screen, we'll go to Julius.
Hi everyone, my name is Julius Eason. I went to 2 HBCUs prior to Purdue. I went to Fort Valley State University, received my bachelor's, and then I went to Florida A&M for my master's, and then shortly after I got recruited through MAP, which they opened many doors because their visitation summer program allowed me to see what opportunities and resources that Purdue has to offer for graduate students. I studied entomology, which is housed in the College of Ag, and I was studying insect gut microbiome. But shortly after, within my degree, I got interested in diversity initiatives and started working with did a little summer internship with the Office of Graduate Diversity Initiatives, where I was a graduate coordinator. And then shortly after I graduated, I became the senior manager for the Office of Graduate Diversity Initiatives, where we oversee many programs such as the Visitation Program, the Summer Research Opportunities Program, we have the Bridge Program, and also the AGEP Alliance Program. So there's a lot of initiatives that we have here today that will support our prospective students as well as our graduate students for recruitment and retention.
Thank you, Julius. Next, we'll go to Yujie.
Thank you, Dr. Knobloch. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Yujie. I went to University of Arkansas Pine Bluff at HBCU for my master, and I went to Purdue for my PhD, focusing on student-centered and culturally responsive teaching in higher education. So I graduated in 2019. And currently, I serve as the faculty consultant at the University of Tennessee. And in my role, I support the faculty in their adoption of those evidence-based teaching strategies to make their classroom more engaging and inclusive. So glad to be here, and thank you again for this opportunity.
All right, thank you, Yujie. Ryan Kornegay.
Good morning, everyone. Excited to be back and see so many smiling faces. And I can concur with Brandon. It's so awesome to be on the other side. So thank you all so much for the invite this morning. I'm Ryan Kornegay. I am a summer 21 graduate of Purdue University, and I'm also an alum of Florida A&M University, where I got my bachelor's degree in food science. So happy homecoming to all the Rattlers I see out there. And I also and my degree at Purdue was in agriculture sciences, education, and communication. My thesis was focused on exploring diverse rural elementary students' interests and concerns of the food system after I created this interactive agri-STEM camp, if you will. So it's exciting to be here today. I am currently serving as a program specialist for the National Institute of Food and Agriculture and the Institute of Food Safety and Nutrition. And so there I help to manage a number of portfolios for our competitive grants programs that are focused on food safety, nutrition, and also ag literacy as well, getting youth engaged with the food system. So I'm excited to be able to engage with you all this morning. I'm looking for a great time.
Excellent. And thank you, all four of you, for joining us today. So let's get started with some questions. Some of you have already kind of dabbled into this, but the first one is, what are some of your personal experiences with mentoring? So you can start anywhere. What are some of your personal experiences with mentoring? And that could be either way, receiving it, giving it. It's a two-way street, right? Who would like to go first?
I can jump. I'll jump in here. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Dr. Knobloch. It works both ways. And I think everybody has both, should be trying to obtain both experiences as best as possible. I have my experiences where I've been the mentee with Dr. Esters and as well as Dr. Knobloch. and others who have guided me along the way as I was preparing for my doctoral studies and getting and matriculating to graduation. I leaned on them for a lot of their experiences, best advice, and sometimes just for a different perspective. Because I mean, not to say that anything that I had thought of wasn't like sound. It was just they gave me another way to look at things, and so I mean, those things do happen, and I wanted those experiences because it helps me be more refined. And then I have my opportunity as a mentor. One of the people that I mentor was Marina Baker. And I mean, from where she started to where she ended up, and she had her expectations for what she was able to do changed over time as we talked about and had time opportunities to discuss. And it helped me grow as well as being a better mentor. And I think having quality mentors that around me helped me be a better mentor to somebody else. And those opportunities, I always try to look for those now, and which is something that we're trying to make sure we incorporate in the mentoring programs that I design now.
Excellent.
I'll go next. So I would say mentoring has probably been kind of informally a part of my life for a while. As the old adage goes, it takes a village to raise a child. So there were a number of people who played a pivotal role in for me even getting to the point of attending Florida A&M. But I would say my first formal mentor relationship was when I started before going to Florida A&M as an intern with the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. I was paired up with a mentor who when she was my age was in the same program, the USD 1890 National Scholars Program. And so her name was Dr. Jody Williams. And she basically kind of helped guide me. I had never really seen individuals who look like so many individuals who look like myself, who had PhDs or who were in this ag space. And so she really kind of opened my mind into think a different way and see other opportunities. And so that relationship really played a role for me as I went into my college years. And also, I would definitely say that it played a role for me even getting connected with MAP. When I was at Florida A&M, I was a president of a mentor organization where we would match upperclassmen students with incoming freshmen. And so that was a time when I got a chance to kind of get my feet wet as serving as a mentor. But as Brandon said, and as Dr. Knobloch shared, there's kind of some different relationships that go there as well. So on the academic side, I got a chance to be recruited by MAP. Dr. Knobloch and Amonte Martin came to FAMU's campus. Amonte is a FAMU alum as well, so I knew him before. And so they recruited me to Purdue's, or to the MAP program, if you will, the Summer Scholars Program. I ended up coming twice. Dr. Knobloch, we got a chance to connect the first time, and it was so good I had to come back again to make sure that I was fully sold on it. And so that was a really great start to a mentor-mentee relationship, because Dr. Knobloch ended up serving as my advisor. And that was just a great relationship because me coming from the South to the Midwest, it made a big difference for me to know some people who were already there at Purdue, who we had some previous relationships, instead of me just kind of coming cold turkey. So the MAP program really played a great role in helping me feel that comfortability. But then as a graduate student, I think some of my experiences here have just been at Purdue were just awesome because I was able to be around a network of individuals who just kind of poured into me in different ways. Dr. Knobloch, of course, was my major advisor and a mentor, but he will also point me in the directions of other people who might have expertise in another area that I might be interested in. And Dr. Knobloch can tell you, I have varied interests in different things. And so that really was a great opportunity for me to kind of connect and see, okay, how can I learn something from someone else? But I must also add too, one of the greatest pieces of me coming to ASEC was the peer mentoring side, because in my cohort of Dr. Knobloch students, of Dr. Escher students, of students who were in the MAP program, we all kind of fed off of each other. And students who were kind of older than me, Brandon and Yujie, who had been at Purdue before, they would give us tips and advice, books that they had, different notes. Miss Tori, I don't know if she's on, but she would help us out as well. And so that peer mentoring piece, even though it was kind of informal, played a big piece in my success at Purdue. And I tried to pay it back as well when new students would come in. like Victoria and Ariane and other students to be able to say, this is what I had when I got here. Now let me play that peer mentoring role as well. So those have been my experiences.
I'll go ahead and jump in. So I guess based on my experience, I love the peer-to-peer mentoring. I love to share, love to give advice to those that are incoming to help them transition into their environment. And that would, based on my first experience with my peer-to-peer mentoring was at Florida A&M. But when I shortly transitioned to Purdue, unfortunately, I did felt lost. I did not have that support, and so what I had to do was go back to the basics. I had to think about how did I survive at my last institution, and I said I reached out to faculty members, not just my PI, because your PI can only do so much. So I decided to reach out to other peers or other faculty members that had the same interests as I did in my research, and so their door is always open, and they allow me to ask so many questions and gain so many knowledge, and they were willing to just help and support. And so that's one thing I do advise all students to do: go back to the basics and seek for mentorship, because you can't always solely rely on your PI or your committee members. And so, and like you said, and sometimes I had to seek out additional resource and support, and that's when I reached out to the Office of Graduate Diversity Initiatives, and my mentor was Dr. Kathy Dixon, where she always told me, what's the worst can happen? They can say no, you can fail, you can learn from those. I don't like to call them mistakes. I like to now call them lessons. So you learn from those lessons, and you can always improve moving forward, because you know what you did wrong. And so now, as a professional, my mentoring strategy has stayed the same, typically because I mentor many students from undergrad to graduate school, and so, or grad school or graduate students. And so now it's like I have to compartmentalize. And so, because one thing is, you have to make sure, you see so many students, but you got to make sure that you understand or listen to what they have to say.
I think for me, my mentoring experience really started when I was in graduate school. Before that, I heard about this word mentoring, but did not really understand what that meant until I went to Purdue. And similar to Ryan and Brandon, and my mentoring experience can be summarized to two levels. The first level is I was a mentee, and I was able to receive those expertise and knowledge from my supportive mentor during my pursuit for my degree. And I was also very grateful for the Mentoring Purdue program, who provided us, those tangible strategies, how to build those effective mentorships, so we can sustain mentorship in our academic pursuit. Another level is peer mentoring. I think peer mentoring, like everybody has already shared, they are powerful, they are effective. And I was very fortunate to have that peer support network, like Ryan, Brandon, all the way from different backgrounds. Our research were different, but we share some common challenges and barriers in the schools. So I was very fortunate to have this supportive network to kind of help me and support me during my graduate school journey. So thank you.
Right. Excellent bits of wisdom in your experiences that you've shared. And I've heard you kind of blend questions 1 and 2 that I shared with you. So if you want to pull anything else in regarding impact, feel free to do so. But I'd like to go to dig a little bit deeper. What advice would you share with graduate students or even faculty who are interested in building mentoring relationships in their careers? So kind of think back into what would what would you share now as advice, looking back? Go ahead.
I guess I'll start. It's a two-way street, as we mentioned, as Brandon and Dr. Norblock, and so we just wanted to say I just wanted to say it's a two-way street, but it needs to be built on honesty and trust, and where the mentor has to take initiative and listen. They don't need to give advice immediately. They can just listen, because students just want to vent sometimes and just want to, or the mentee wants to vent, and then you be like, because I can remember the last time someone vented and I'm like, they were like, you don't have nothing to say? I said, no, I think you just needed to spill the tea. I'm just here to listen. And let's follow up with this again moving in our next following meeting, because it's not, sometimes as a mentor, we don't have the right right answer, or not the right answer, but the guidance. And so sometimes we have to do our homework as well, and take in, because sometimes what we hear can be very overwhelming. And so, like I said, it needs to be built on honesty and trust, and both the relationship will grow over time, because it's just, you can't just, I don't like to use students as a stat. I don't like to, because we all have feelings. We all have a personality. And so you have to, as a mentor and a mentee, both have to share your personality so they can get to know each other. But you also have to, as a mentor, say, hey, this is what I can only guide you on. I can't open that Pandora box and say, hey, I can do everything for you. I got tricks of trades. I can't do everything for you. And you need to utilizes the resources that I know that can help you improve on your better half. And so that's what I would instill and say typically is, you need to just listen to the student, build your relationship on honesty and trust, and then you'll see the growth of your relationship moving forward.
I definitely second what Dr. Eason has shared. I think, that mentorship is definitely a long-term commitment or efforts. It takes a lot of time to build that trust. And so I would add that be patient, because sometimes, we need extra time to kind of like get to know each other and started to build that trust, so we can continue to build that relationship. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
Two main things come to mind for me with this question. Number one of the things that I would advise individuals who are trying to build this relationship to do is to be willing to find common ground, because a lot of times you have more in common than you may think you do. So for instance, Dr. Knobloch is from the Midwest, I'm from the South. However, we found common ground through music, we found common ground through church, but also we're foodies. So we found common ground there, so we could find things that we could connect on that kind of broke the ice for that mentorship relationship to really flourish even more, and to also kind of lead into my next piece of advice, which is the second one is to be willing to be vulnerable. I think that is a key to any an authentic mentor-mentee relationship, because there are a lot of relationships that go on that are not as authentic. They may be more of a, hey, what's going on? Okay, that sounds good. See you next time. But those truly authentic mentor-mentee relationships are kind of built through, kind of, to me, it's embedded in you. It's kind of almost emotional in a way. But you have to be willing to be vulnerable, and that's for the mentor and the mentee. The mentee has to be willing to be vulnerable enough to share, what they might be struggling with, what they need help with, and be willing to say, hey, I need help, or, how can you help me navigate through this? They have to be willing to share, the things that they might not be comfortable with. And then on the mentor side, I feel like mentors also need to be willing to be vulnerable, to share their struggles that they overcame, that they achieved, and even the ones that they may not have navigated the way they wanted to. Because to me, if I can hear that story from you and you're being authentic and you're telling me the real, as I want to say, if you're telling me the real, then I feel like I can trust you, because that means that you're willing to give enough of yourself. And now I might be willing to give you some more of me. So it's almost that give and take, if you will. You're willing to be vulnerable with me. I'm willing to be vulnerable with you. And that's how you build that level of trust, because you understand, hey, nobody's perfect. We've all had our struggles. And I think, especially from the mentee standpoint, a lot of times we see almost what we would say is a finished product of just like this great mentor who they've done all this, they're just amazing. But to hear, hey, I'm human too, I've done this, and this is how I navigated through this situation. That is one of the most encouraging things that a mentor could ever offer to a mentee, in my opinion, because it gives some hope, it gives a sense of encouragement to fight on. So vulnerability and the willingness to find that common ground are the two main key points, I think, that I would share.
And I think I will echo everybody's point, but I think for me, I think one of the most crucial steps is really interrogating yourself first before you even try to build those relationships. And what I mean by interrogating yourself is really asking yourself, one of the most foundational questions is, do you know what a mentor is? Do you know what a mentor does? Do you have your own strategy for how you want to, for how you mentor, right? And then asking yourself about those biases that you may hold, with those traditional ways in which we interrogate ourselves, asking ourselves, have I had this experience before? Like, is there some things that I need to learn about myself before I even expose a potential mentee to this? So you want to make sure you're doing those foundational steps, because you may be creating a poor mentorship foundation for a mentee that can be very damaging. And you don't ever want to be able, when you ever want to do that, because it's very hard to come back from that with your mentee. And so I'm quite sure folks can tell you many different ways in which they probably had a bad mentorship experience and they had to cut somebody off. And those relationships are very critical in our lives. It can be very foundational to our growth. So we want to make sure that you are doing that necessary work before you even building those relationships. Just really make sure that you're asking yourself these questions. And make sure you can answer those questions, for some of those questions for yourself. Like, what do you see your mentoring engagement looking like? And then once you do have a mentee, that you have to try to have some common ground too about, okay, is there a way that I can blend my mentoring strategy with what you're looking for, and vice versa? Because you want to make sure that you're giving what they can receive. So I would just add that little nugget to it. But I echo everything everybody else said.
I like to add to that one more time, Dr. Allen. I would say also it's for both parties. You need to hold accountability. And typically, like I started working on IDPs, trying to find unique IDPs, which is individual development plans, so I can understand what are their goals, what are the student goals, or the mentee goals, because we want to make sure, to have some structure of a mentoring and unprofessional, like not unprofessional, but informal structuring to help them get to their next goal or next agenda. Because but we want to make sure it's not a stressful environment, because I remember one student was like, I was like, okay, what we're working on today? She like, well, I didn't do so much, and she felt bad. I'm like, there's no need to feel bad, at least you're working on it. You got some information about where we're heading to. But that right there told me, like, okay, she felt like, or that person felt she didn't exceed her expectations, where she had to submit this deadline for me. But I told her, like, hey, it's okay, we'll continue working on this. We still got time to get to where I want you to be, or where you want to be at. And so I also like Dr. Huang said, be patient with the mentee. It takes time. Be patient, and you'll see you'll see the growth in the relationship blossom.
Well, this is just excellent to hear all these pearls of wisdom, and thank you for sharing that. I'm going to mix it up a little bit here. We have about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to open it up to the floor. So one more question, and then we'll open it up for others who are joining us today to ask their questions. And feel free to, you can write those in the chat or you can unmute. My next question is, let's get real about some of your experiences in transitioning from graduate school into your professional role. So what were some of those challenges as you reflect back? And for most of you, it's been pretty recent. And then what did you do to try to seek advice or go get some mentoring support as you then were trying to get the job, as well as then going into the new role in your job? So it's kind of double barreled there. Any challenges about finding the job once you were hired and you started, any challenges there? And then in what ways has mentoring come to the fore in helping you with those challenges?
Oh, I would like to go first on this one. Man, I'd like to go first on this one because I honestly cannot thank Dr. Esther's enough. So I graduated when Tori graduated, and Yujie graduated as well. You see Tori also hopped in. Hey, Tori. And so that was August 2019. And so, I was on the job market, had several job interviews, and I'll always be a finalist for all these job interviews. And then I just never get the job. It always went to an internal candidate. And so it was just like, it can be devastating having to happen over and over and over. And so now it's getting to like December, January, I still haven't gotten hired. And then I have a couple of family issues that happened, but then COVID happened and everything just kind of like shut down. And I promise you, the connections that Dr. Estes had, as well as what he was able to do for me, helped me along the way while I was waiting to find a job. His connection with Dr. Janelle Williams offered me an opportunity to teach online for a course. And then we also had an opportunity to write a paper together in which we was provided funding to write a paper about the HBCU responses to HBCU and AAU institutions' responses to the George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery protests that happened in 2020. So those things were like foundation. It kept me engaged with because I'm telling you, I was losing hope. The entire 2020, I did not make a cent. And so to have him as a crutch to utilize when I needed it, and then also he also was looking over because I sent him my cover letters, my resume. I probably sent it to him like 5, 6, 7 times because I was just frustrated. I was frustrated. And like lo and behold, man, he kept engaged with me, did not like leave me high and dry. Like he stayed. He was one of the most consistent people to stay in touch with me. And it really helped me along the way until I was able to get a full-time job and stuff like that. Now I got a full-time job and I teach and do all that great stuff. But it was a rocky time for me. But if it wasn't for my mentor, Dr. Estes, because your mentors, you want to make sure that they're your mentors for life. That's like a lifelong partnership there, and you want to make sure that that's why it's so critical that it is of quality, because you want somebody that you don't have to keep replacing. Right, you want somebody that's going to stay consistent, and I promise you, Dr. Estes is one of those folks who stayed consistent and stayed looking for me opportunities, and I'm forever, ever grateful for the things that my mentor was able to do for me.
I guess I like to build on that. I just want to emphasize one mentor is not one size fits all, and so. Luckily, I was fortunate to go through three institutions, and I stayed with healthy relationships with faculty and staff within those institutions, and they're always willing to just send a note and say, how's everything going? How's your family? Because they seen me. They knew they knew me and they were like, hey, you can do better, Julius. You you don't you can do the right things. You don't got to take the left direction and go south. And so those mentors, which is a handful of them and more, have helped me along this journey, and I have stayed connected in a healthy relationships. And one thing I will advise to all: maintain those healthy relationships with every environment that you stay in, because you never know that you might need them later on. Because like you said, the pandemic kind of hit hard for all of us, but both my PIs from Fort Valley and Florida A&M, they randomly just called me at the same day, even though they were friends. They were like, I need to check on Julius, and they listened to me. They heard me out. They were like, hey, you can. There are other opportunities. And whatever you decide to do, they'll help. They were supportive. So just to remind you all that maintain those healthy relationships, and don't think that like once you leave here those doors are closed.
I would also add that mentor wants you to be successful. And I remember, like, when I was a fresh graduate entering the job market, I was very fortunate to have Dr. Knobloch as my mentor, kind of help me to thinking about what my career path might look like, because he knows my research, he knows my skills, he knows my interests, and he is an expert in that field. So I was really appreciative of his, his input and insights, kind of helping me to rethink or to see what are my opportunities, what are my options in the market, and connect me with those resources, all the colleagues in that field, so I can get a better understanding of what that career might look like in the next 5 or 10 years. And thinking about now, as we are young professionals in our respective fields, even though the mentoring, the context is different, but I think the principles are still the same. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to approach your mentors. And again, they want you to be successful, and they are willing to support you in the ways they can. So.
Yeah, I definitely have a very recent story about this, and I just want to definitely say it's always, and Julius said something about this earlier about, making sure you can keep in those connections. So I think I shared earlier, one of my first mentors when I came into USDA was Dr. Jody Williams. When I was transitioning over, she played a really pivotal role for me. So as I was finishing up my thesis, or as I finished defended, before I came on full time, I went back into an internship. I was in an internship role with NIFA, and Dr. Knobloch, it was so gracious. As soon as I deposited my thesis, we were on a timeline to try to go ahead and get paperwork in so that I could be shifted into my full-time role, and that it would be a smooth transition. The smooth transition was definitely not there whatsoever. Dr. Knobloch submitted the letter, and we had gotten okay beforehand that when he submits the letter, I'll be good to go. I get a call probably a week later saying that the letter didn't suffice, and within like the next 4 days that I had to have notification from the registrar's office that I had completed all of my degree requirements. And so this is like right before a holiday. And so I immediately get on the call with our graduate coordinator, Miss Jenny. And Miss Jenny, she may not be here, but thank you so much, because I was like, who do I call? Because I looked online for this. The registrar's office says they don't give these out for thesis students. What do I do? So she told me to call the graduate school. I called the graduate school, and they listened to me. And literally within about a day or two, they moved really swiftly. They got me the notification. I had to check back because the USDA said they wanted a letter from the registrar's office. I said, hey, please let me know. Will this be fine from the graduate school? Because I don't want any hiccups, anything of that nature. So I called somebody from registrars. They sent an email to the USDA saying, hey, this checks out. the graduate school sent this letter, this is okay, we don't send this. And so everything was processed. Come to find out, the date they said that everything needed to be done, we put it in about 2 weeks before it was due. However, I wasn't converted until probably another month and a half. So I was interning and at a level that was, let's just say, a whole lot higher than what I was getting paid. I'll say that. And so there was a lot of frustration there at the time. And my mentor, Dr. Williams, was just really helpful in making sure that I stuck up for myself. And I will say too, that's a really, really pivotal role for a mentor to play in that transition period. And that's also something I'm learning too. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm really a yes, sir, yes, ma'am, Dr. So-and-so, Dr. Whoever. And so one of my mentors had to sit me to the side and say, hey, as you transition, you need to try to think, you were intern, now you are a full-time employee. You kind of need to make sure that you remember that you're not the intern Ryan anymore, you're the colleague Ryan now. And that really made me sit back and think, because I'm like, wow, that's very true. Because now I really am working at this level. And of course, for me, it's a respect thing. But on the other end, it's also recognizing, hey, I've somewhat made it here. Of course, I'm still getting there, but I've somewhat made it here. So recognizing that, I'm not here to do, I'm not the guy that's getting the coffee anymore. Not that I ever got coffee, but just kind of as a formality sake. But I'm not the guy that was getting the coffee anymore. I'm the one who's helping to literally manage programs. So that was a really turning point for me. And then also making sure that I was comfortable enough to recognize what I needed to ask for, and also to recognize what I would be willing to take and not take. Because coming in fresh as a fresh student coming and get with their masters, everybody kind of wants to throw you certain things, but you can also say no. You can also negotiate. You can also be willing to come to an agreement on something. And that was something that my mentor had to help me recognize. And also she helped guide me through, what would the best options be for me coming in. And I'll be forever appreciative of that from her, as well as other mentors that I've had in that time of just kind of transitioning.
Well, that's just excellent. Everything that you shared in this last question was from your heart and with passion. And it's just neat to hear that, how you worked through that and made sure you were being successful and seeing your needs were being met. Let's transition now to any questions in chat. And I do have one here from Odie. She said, I don't think we missed this, but her question is, how did you all go about seeking these mentors? So Julius, you talked about healthy relationships, all of the positive things that you experienced. So I think that's the question, is how do you go find mentors that are going to have your best interest in heart and be helpful?
As I think, as one of our panelists indicated, that I guess I'm observant as well as a social bird. So I'm a hummingbird that likes to go to all these little nectars and socialize. And so, based on socializing, going to the coffee breaks in your department, for example, that's allowed me to go talk to certain faculty, certain peers, to find out if they're relatable, if I can relate to them, however, those are unique skill sets that we all have to work on to see how can we relate to all individuals here. And so I think, not to say I have, I'm really good at it, but I'm able to have those conversations that can inspire, can just continue bring out more conversation. And so based on that, I would I would just be myself, really. And like I said, you have to be honest and be truth and honest to yourself. Like, I'm not going to change who I am. And so I will be who I am to so they can understand where I've come from and how I go about things. And so hopefully we, not to say I'm perfect, because I always tell people, what are things that I can work on? What do you not like about how I go about getting things completed, my to-do task and everything? Because I want to make sure we all have those healthy relationships where we can be truthful to each other, because at the end of the day, I just want each and every one to prosper, to excel in their own personal goals or professional goals. And so typically I guess it depends on the person, because not everybody's outgoing. We have introverts and extroverts. And so honestly, you just have to I guess observe the situation and see if you feel comfortable being able to be honest to yourself, and so you can be honest to that mentor or mentee.
I would also add that, like Ryan said, we need multiple mentors. So take advantage of those professional development opportunities, such as right here, we have a Mentoring Purdue, we have guest speakers, we have a lot of people coming from different backgrounds and perspectives. And for example, when you go to conference, you might identify something that you could connect with a presenter, whether it's research interests or some other things. Then you could approach them, have this informal conversation, and to see how that conversation could move forward, and you can build a potential mentorship out of the opportunity.
I would also like to add, in seeking these relationships, Julius shared one big point about being willing to put yourself out there, and Yujie also shared about going to professional development opportunities. But to add on to that, definitely be willing to put yourself out there to go to those conferences, those meetings, any types of opportunities to do maybe a workshop or something like that. But take it a step forward after. If you hear somebody in one of those conferences or workshops or something, and you were just like, wow, they were on it. What they're sharing is literally right up my alley. I want to know this person. I wouldn't tell you to just go directly after that and write them an email saying, hey, will you be my mentor? But what I would tell you to do is say, hey, I really enjoyed your conversation, your speech. Would you be willing to maybe have a chat at some point to maybe, for us to share ideas and just kind of talk, and for me to hear more about what you do? I can share some of the things that I do, and just kind of build it kind of naturally from there. I share that because one of my mentors now as well, he came about to being one of my mentors and one of my committee members because he was a guest speaker in the class. And when he spoke and his topic, I was like, whoa, never heard anything like that before, but I'm loving where he's going. This is something I'm interested in. I had never really heard of some of the areas that he was in. And so I sent that email. We had a great conversation. It probably was 30 minutes to an hour, if not more. And from there, we just kind of developed a relationship after that. And that was just a really great opportunity. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. Take that extra step, send that email. If you see them in the hallway, chat with them for a quick second, but definitely shoot that email after that conference or whatever and connect with somebody there. Because I feel like if they're willing to share there, they're usually willing to share in like a one-on-one meeting as well.
That's excellent. We have another question. And so TV has her hand raised. You can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. My question builds off of what a lot of the mentors shared about making that initial connection. What I struggle with is making that follow-up after the initial connection whenever you're not really in need of anything. For example, I've been connected with numerous scholars in my field, and I don't necessarily need anything right now, but I also want to keep in touch with them. And so I never really know what to do in that situation. Like, we have our initial meeting, we share our ideas, have a great conversation, but I don't need feedback on anything. I don't need any advice right now. I'm not, at the time I wasn't on the job market, but now I am. And so now I'm like, dang, I wish I would have done something better. So what advice do you have for students to maintain relationships when they don't necessarily have an ask from their mentor? Oh, and I would add that this is not necessarily for people on campus that we can just stop by and have a coffee with. This is like virtual connections that you make at conferences with people outside of Purdue?
Great question.
That's
Great.
a great question, Timmy. Go ahead, Yujie.
Thank you, Ryan. I think great question, Tammy. What I tend to do is I send out those follow-up email to kind of update my mentors where I am right now. Say, okay, it does not necessarily have to be big, just like make it casual. Say, hey, Dr. Knobloch or Dr. Esther's, right now I'm currently working on this project in my current role, and just wanted to share this update with them so they know like where you are, and they also know what are your objectives moving forward. So just like I said, make it informal and just update them regularly.
Definitely, Yujie, that's a great point there. And I want to just start off, Timmy, by saying that's something I also have struggled with as well, and I've been trying to find a way to navigate. One of the ways I've been navigating that with some of my mentors at USDA is that I've been now putting like either biweekly or monthly meetings on calendars. Just saying, hey, when are you kind of free just for a quick chat? It could be 30 minutes, it could be an hour, however long you can keep it for however long you want to. But what I've realized is that that's kept us kind of in touch and in contact for, even if we didn't have a specific topic or a specific thing that I needed help with at that time, or a specific thing that they needed to share, we just kind of chat about things that were going on with us at the time, and things we're working on, things that we're interested in. I would share things that I'm interested in and doing, or something that I might have learned, and I would get insight from them there. So I would encourage you to potentially maybe look into doing maybe monthly chats. And if in the check-in idea that Yujie was sharing is definitely great. And for me, I know I like to kind of be face-to-face a little bit, if you will. Well, virtually, because I haven't met face-to-face with anybody, but we'll meet on Teams, we'll meet on Zoom, and we'll chat for at least about 30 minutes to an hour. Sometimes we end early, but we just at least have that block on our schedule to where we can just kind of chat and check in. And so when I do need something, I know, okay, I'm going to be meeting with them next week, so I can bring this up then. I'll go ahead and put a check mark down. So that's one of the ways I'm trying to work on that as well.
Yeah, they said that was a fantastic question, and I think that's something that we always talk about the first meeting, but we never talk about the second one. And so I know that's kind of that's a great question that we often don't think about. But yeah, I've done both of what Yujie and Ryan have said. I've held standing meetings. I did follow-up emails. I will honestly, if you feel like you just want to be able to converse with them and talk about, find something that may you think they may be interested in, that you heard about, and bring that up and say, hey, I just read about this, or I have some questions about something that I just read. Like try to find that interest area. If you just like you need to talk with them and want to reach out to them, so I just want to get your thoughts on some things. So all of this, because I've done that before. Like I've emailed folks and say, hey, I'm trying to, I have had this issue, or I read about this thing in the news. I just want to get your thoughts on it. You got a couple of minutes so we can talk right fast, because I'm thinking about doing something with this. I've done that several times, and that's been fine. And so there's multiple strategies, but I would say in what Ryan and Yujie said has both worked for me, as well as finding things to discuss. All three of those have helped me.
I guess I would add to that. Sometimes I guess you got to understand where's your degree, or where do you see yourself with the relationship of your mentor. And because sometimes, if I have a mentor, I treat them like family. So sometimes I'm like, oh, and how I treat family is like, no news is good news. And so, but I know that's not the right thing. But also, in addition, if they don't hear from me through email, I might just it's okay for me to randomly call them and leave a voice message and say, just checking on you, just want to know how's everything going, because I remember my mentor, he called me at 11:30 at night, and I thought something was wrong. And so he was like, no, I'm just following up because you told me you were going to call me and you didn't. And so that right there, to me, I have that right there. I understand my relationship is more than a mentor mentee relationship, where he can be able to just call me at 11:30 in the morning. But if you're just in the beginning, initial stage of trying to develop a relationship, a mentor mentee relationship, just be, I guess you have to be superficial. Send a note that that Brandon and Ryan indicated, that find that common ground where you can talk about an article or something, or just send a note and say, because how many holidays have we had so far this semester? Just say happy holidays. Send a note. Just say you're just on my mind. Just wanted to shoot out happy holidays, and then tell them where you at in life. And so that will be a healthy relationship where it's a two-way street, where you feel like you can give that follow-up, even though you don't have nothing to say. Just say, hey, everything's going good on my way.
Excellent. An excellent question. Thank you all for joining us today. Really appreciate the insights from the panel. Thanks for giving your hour to us, and for all of you who joined us. So in the chat, there was a URL posted that you can click on and just give us about a minute and a half of your time and complete the Qualtrics form so we can get the feedback and continue to plan forward with the webinars. There's also a link in the chat that there will be a recording of this posted on the YouTube channel for Mentoring at Purdue. You'll also be finding that if you Google Mentoring at Purdue, you'll find it through our website link as well. So excellent. Please give us your feedback, and let's stay in touch with in the future webinars, continue this conversation. But thank you, Brandon, Julius, Yujie, and Ryan, for sharing your experiences, your wisdom, your insights. And it felt like a homecoming getting back together today. So thanks for jumping on. That'll be it for today's webinar, and hope you can enjoy the rest of the day. Stay warm and stay healthy. We'll see y'all.